The Douglas DC-3 is a propeller-driven airliner manufactured by Douglas Aircraft Company, which had a lasting effect on the airline industry in the 1930s to 1940s and World War II. It was developed as a larger, improved 14-bed sleeper version of the Douglas DC-2. It is a low-wing metal monoplane with conventional landing gear, powered by two radial piston engines. Although the DC-3s originally built for civil service had the Wright R-1820 Cyclone, later civilian DC-3s used the Pratt A. Whitney R-1830 Twin Wasp engine. The DC-3 has a cruising speed of 207 miles per hour, a capacity of 21 to 32 passengers, or 6,000 pounds, 2,700 kilograms, of cargo, and a range of 1,500 miles, and can operate from short runways. The DC-3 had many exceptional qualities compared to previous aircraft. It was fast, had a good range, was more reliable, and carried passengers in greater comfort. Before the war, it pioneered many air travel routes. It was able to cross the continental United States from New York to Los Angeles in 18 hours with only 3 stops. It is one of the first airliners that could profitably carry only passengers without relying on mail subsidies. Following the war, the airliner market was flooded with surplus transport aircraft, and the DC-3 was no longer competitive due to its inadequate size and slow speed. It was made obsolete on main routes by more advanced types such as the Douglas DC-4 and Lockheed Constellation, but the design proved adaptable and useful on less commercially demanding routes. Civilian DC-3 production ended in 1942 at 607 aircraft. Military versions, including the C-47 Skytrain, the Dakota in British RAF service and Soviet, and Japanese-built versions brought the total production to over 16,000. Many continued to be used in a variety of niche roles. 2,000 DC-3s and military derivatives were estimated to be still flying in 2013. A 2017 article put the number at that time at more than 300. DC stands for Douglas Commercial. The DC-3 was the culmination of a development effort that began after an inquiry from Transcontinental and Western Airlines, TWA Douglas, TWA's rival in transcontinental air service. United Airlines was starting service with the Boeing 247, and Boeing refused to sell any 247s to other airlines until United's order for 60 aircraft had been filled. TWA asked Douglas to design and build an aircraft that would allow TWA to compete with United. Douglas's design, the 1933 DC-1, was promising and led to the DC-2 1934. The DC-2 was a success, but with room for improvement. The DC-3 resulted from a marathon telephone call from American Airlines CEO Smith to Donald Douglas when Smith persuaded a reluctant Douglas to design a sleeper aircraft based on the DC-2 to replace American's Curtiss Condor IBA plane. The DC-2's cabin was 66 inches, 1.7 meters, wide, too narrow for by-side berths. Douglas agreed to go ahead with development only after Smith informed him of American's intention to purchase 20 aircraft. The new aircraft was engineered by a team led by Chief Engineer Arthur E. Raymond over the next 2 years, and the prototype DST Douglas Sleeper Transport first flew on December 17, 1935, the 32nd anniversary of the Wright brothers' flight at Kitty Hawk, with Douglas Chief Test Pilot Cover at the controls. Its cabin was 92 inches, 2,300 millimeters wide, and a version with 21 seats instead of the 14-16 sleeping berths of the DSD was given the designation D3. The DC-3 popularized air travel in the United States. Eastbound transcontinental flights could cross the U.S. in about 15 hours with 3 refueling stops, while westbound trips against the wind took 17 hours. A few years earlier, such a trip entailed short hops in slower and shorter range aircraft during the day, coupled with train travel overnight. Early production civilian aircraft used either the 9-cylinder Wright R-1820 Cyclone 9 or the 14-cylinder Pratt Whitney R-1830 Twin Wasp, but the Twin Wasp was chosen for most military versions and was also used by most DC-3s converted from military service. 5 DC-3 Super DC-3s with Pratt Whitney R-2000 Twin Wasps were built in the late 1940s, 3 of which entered airline service. Total production, including all military variants, was 16,079. More than 400 remained in commercial service in 1998. Production of DSTs ended in mid-1941, and civilian DC-3 production ended in early 1943. Although dozens of the DST and D-3s ordered by airlines that were produced between 1941 and 1943 were pressed into the U.S. military service, military versions were produced until the end of the war in 1945. A larger, more powerful Super DC-3 was launched in 1949 to positive reviews. The civilian market was flooded with second-hand C-40 second and C-40 Benz, many of which were converted to passenger and cargo version. Only 5 Super DC-3s were built, and 3 of them were delivered for commercial use. Early U.S. airlines like American, United, and Delta ordered over 400 DC-3s. These fleets paved the way for the modern American air travel industry, which eventually replaced trains as the favored means of long-distance travel across the United States. A non-profit group, Flagship Detroit Foundation, continues to operate the only original American Airlines flagship DC-3 with airshow and airport visits throughout the U.S. In 1936, KLM Royal Dutch Airlines received its first DC-3, which replaced the DC-2 service from Amsterdam via Batavia, now Jakarta, to Sydney, by far the world's longest scheduled route at the time. In total, KLM bought 23 DC-3s before the war broke out in Europe. In 1941, a China National Aviation Corporation, CNAA DC-3, pressed into wartime transportation service, was bombed on the ground at Suifu Airfield in China, destroying the outer right wing. The only spare available was that of a smaller Douglas DC-2. The DC-2's right wing was removed and bolted up to the damaged aircraft. After a single test flight, in which it was discovered that it pulled to the right due to the difference in wing sizes, the so-called DC-212 was flown to safety. During World War II, many civilian DC-3s were drafted for the war effort, and more than 10,000 U.S. military versions of the DC-3 were built. After the war, thousands of cheap ex-military DC-3s became available for civilian use. Cubana de Aviación became the first Latin American airline to offer a scheduled service to Miami when it started its first scheduled international service from Havana in 1945 with the DC-3. Cubana used DC-3s on some domestic routes well into the 1960s. Douglas developed an improved version, the Super DC-3, with more power, greater cargo capacity, and an improved wing, but with surplus aircraft available for cheap. They failed to sell well in the civilian aviation market. Only 5 were delivered, 3 of them to Capital Airlines. A number of aircraft companies attempted to design a DC-3 replacement. Over the next 3 decades, including the very successful Fokker F-27 Friendship, but no single type could match the versatility, rugged reliability, and economy of the DC-3. It remained a significant part of air transport systems well into the 1970s. Perhaps unique among pre-war aircraft, the DC-3 continues to fly in active commercial and military service as of 2021, 86 years after the type's first flight in 1935. There are still small operators with DC-3s in revenue service and as cargo aircraft. Applications of the DC-3 have included passenger service, aerial spraying, freight transport, military transport, missionary flying, skydiver shuttling, and sightseeing. There have been a very large number of civil and military operators of the DC-3, 347 and related types, which would have made it impracticable to provide a comprehensive listing of all operators. A common saying among aviation enthusiasts and pilots is the only replacement for a DC-3 is another DC-3. Its ability to use grass or dirt runways makes it popular in developing countries or remote areas where runways may be unpaved. The oldest surviving DST is 933, the sixth Douglas sleeper transport built, manufactured in 1936. This aircraft was delivered to American Airlines on 12 July 1936. It has been repaired and has been flying again. The most recent flight was on 25 April 2021. The oldest DC-3 still flying is the original American Airlines flagship Detroit. Con 1920, the 43rd aircraft off the Santa Monica production line, delivered on 2 March 1937, which appears at air shows around the United States and is owned and operated by the flagship Detroit Foundation. The base price of a new DC-3 in 1936 was around $60,000, $80,000, and by 1960, used examples were available for $75,000. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to please like and subscribe. If you have a topic you would like to suggest, leave a comment.